Okay, welcome to the Shareholder Committee for Dorset Holdings. It's 2nd of December 2024, and we're in Committee Room 1, County Hall, and the intention is we're going to be here going forward. So I'm Councillor Nick Ireland, Council Leader in this committee. We've got other members attending, both in the room and virtually. So Councillor Sompers are here, and some officers. Can you make sure your mobile phones are turned off? And when you speak on an agenda item for the first time, introduce yourself. People who don't know who you are. So item 1 on the agenda is apologies. We have one. Councillor.
Yes, apologies from Councillor Jill Taylor.
Item number 2 is the minutes from the meeting held on the 7th of October 2024. Everybody read them? Anybody have any problems? I wasn't actually at that meeting, I believe. So be happy we sign them. Any declarations of interest? Is there anything on the agenda? Members? Nope. Item number 4, public participation. There have been no questions or statements received from the public, so nothing to do there. Item number 5 is questions from councillors. No questions have been received from councillors. So on to item number 6, which is the forward plan in the papers. Does any member of the committee have any points or votes they want to raise? Nope. Okay. So we're on to item number 7, which is Dorset Council Organisation Update. It's going to be presented by John Price, Mark Tyson. So over to you, John. Is he on?
It's actually going to be Mark who's going to run through it. So
over to you, Mark, then.
Yeah. So thank you, Chair. I'm Mark Tyson. I'm the Corporate Director for Commissioning and Improvement for Adult Services. The report is shorter than usual because there's been a shorter interval between committees. And it also, in terms of setting the context of where the council's at, and as relevant to our conversations and our work with Care Dorset, it repeats quite a bit of what was in Cabinet on the 19th of November. So I won't go into too much of that detail. The previous Cabinet, though, in October, approved the demolition of the current Sydney Gale house and the next steps with respect to the rebuild of that facility. The council will be managing the programme for the construction, supported by external advice, and of course, Care Dorset are a key stakeholder in that. So we're working jointly with them on the approach and the scope and the building as it will emerge, and we expect that to be sort of around early 2028 when that's completed and ready for admission. Since the last meeting, we've had the kind of formal opening of St Martin's House Extra Care Scheme, which I think everybody who was present was suitably wowed by, as a very new. Good, solid new facility, a very nice environment, living environment. And I think at that point, there's about 17 people who were lined up or had moved in. So already kind of some significant uptake. Into the new year, we will be starting with the place-by-place kind of consultation about the future of day services. So the model that was agreed at Cabinet back in September. We'll be taking out on the road to have conversations in the different places about what it means for different parts of the county, and some of the existing facilities we have there. And Care Dorset have been very much involved with us in shaping that, because obviously the centres that they operate and the people who use them and the people who work in them are key voices that we will be hearing as we that forward. And then finally, I've given a little summary in this report here, but obviously that it's been a lot more detail in the Cabinet papers for November. The key bit I think is relevant for the committee to note is the financial reports that were at Cabinet, and they set a backdrop for the work we'll be doing with Care Dorset into the next year and the year after. And although, I mean, it paints a challenging picture for the council's finances, to give the committee assurance, we are continuing to work on that basis. There's no interest for us in strangling the company by pushing all of the kind of issue to be cost. However, we are also having some of those challenging conversations, I'm sure a colleague will agree, about how we can minimise costs as much as possible in a challenging year for the council. So we're trying to get that balance right between still supporting the company in its development at this point. And I think at that point I'll pause if there's any questions.
Thank you, Lord. I managed to visit the new site in Gillingham 2 weeks ago. It's really good. It's excellent. Well done.
Got there. Well,
the only other thing I was going to mention, is there any progress on the reablement site at DCH? Is anything worth noting or any further forward?
We're continuing to have the conversations under the kind of original heads of terms that we were agreeing around the possible issues with securing the land and the site and so forth. But I think with the agreement that Sydney Gale can go ahead, we are at least now able to kind of, in a sense, get on with the kind of what does this model look like? How will it operate? How will it help the system to work? And then we can apply that when we've got the other issues resolved at the Dorset County Hospital site.
There are some meetings going on at the moment, so things have warmed up slightly in the conversation. I wouldn't expect any decisions quickly, but it's in the hands of legal people. Though everyone wants it to happen, it's the lawyers that are holding things up.
Thank you. I can't see any hands up on the screen. Anybody else want to comment? No. Okay, in which case there's recommendations. I won't read them out, but it's to note those recommendations. So I think we're happy to note those. Forward to the next agenda item. So we're on agenda item 8, which is Kerr Dorset update report from the chair of the board. So this can be presented by Caroline.
Thank you very much. I'm Caroline Tapster and I'm the chair of the Kerr Dorset Board of Directors, and this is also a very short report from me this time. It was in fact only 8 weeks since we last met, and there is a much more detailed report on the agenda on our annual performance later on the agenda. A couple of things from me, then I'll ask Chris Best, Managing Director, to cover the financial and operational performance. Firstly, following the reports in the media on the tragic incidents in the care home in Swanage, our board has been assured that we have done all the necessary checks and have purchased any equipment that we thought might be necessary. So we did want to, even though we do not know what happened there, we have made sure that we have covered the risks as best as we can in our own residential establishments. And secondly, at our last meeting, I gave you an update on our governance review, which we've more or less finished. We're just doing some final housekeeping. It's in section 19 of my report. We've made sure that we've registered our senior information risk owner, our court garden, our data protection officer, all been registered with NHS Digital, because obviously data protection and information governance is extremely important to everybody at Kerr Dorset. And the board also had another training and development day a couple of weeks ago, where we looked at our role as directors of the companies, what our responsibilities were, and also how we work together effectively as a team. So we are looking after our own training and development at the same time as making sure our colleagues have access to everything that they need. I'll hand over to Chris just to cover a few other points from the report.
Yes, thank you, Caroline. Chris Best, Managing Director of Kerr Dorset. Just picking up on some of the points that Caroline mentioned there, our financial year ended on the 30th of September. The year-end accounts will now be audited with the report coming to this shareholder committee in mid-2025 prior to filing in Companies House. Our position is more favourable than it was last year as a result of some of the activity that we've been undertaking this year. Some of the challenges that we've experienced through the year, which explains the worse than budget position, is we had anticipated that St Martin's would have opened earlier than it did. We've obviously also had some inflationary pressures that we've had to manage throughout the year. Agency in the early part of the year was higher than we'd expected it to be, but efforts from our operational and HR colleagues have brought that down, and we're in a much better position as a result of that. Operational delivery, we've already mentioned St Martin's, but I think it's important to underline how pleased we are to be the operating partner for St Martin's House Extra Care Housing. And indeed, just as a sort of short vignette, there was a husband and wife that had recently moved in, and as a result of the support that our colleagues are able to provide, the lady was going out for the day in the knowledge that her husband was being well supported, which isn't something that's happened for many months prior to them moving into St Martin's. So St Martin's is already doing what it intended to happen in relation to helping people to live as independently as possible in the knowledge that they've got a care team that's able to support them. That's positive, I think. Occupancy levels remain higher than they were on transfer. Talk about that a little bit more, expecting in the annual performance report. Recruitment, there's been a slight drop in recruitment activity as we sort of go into the winter months, but we remain in a position where our vacancies are low. Apologies for some of the sort of jargon mentioned in 15, but our sort of we use the term onboarding, but what we effectively refer to is our induction, our process, and making sure that everyone is compliant with the Regulation 19 obligations of the Care Act as well. Our learning and development reviews, we've been undertaking a review of all of our learning practices to ensure that they are as appropriate and effective as possible, and we are investing in an increased number of learning and development practitioners to improve that offer, and also to bring training that has previously been outsourced in-house, so that we're able to control the costs of that to a much greater extent, and also improve and build on the quality of the training that's delivered, and be more responsive to the needs of individuals as people move into our accommodation. So they were the points I wanted to raise, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions.
Let's see, hands up online. Are you in the room? Richard?
Yeah, Richard Biggs, Cabinet Member for Property Assets and Economic Growth. I welcome your area on strategic risk and the fact that you're taking issues separately. I think that's really good practice. I just wonder whether you looked at or thinking of doing an opportunities register, because trying to lever in those applying the same principles of risk management with mitigation to enhance those opportunities is something that is good practice, and something I want to think about.
Thank you. Yes, so we've still got some outstanding consultation with Gallagher Bassett, who are providing some of our consultancy with. So that's part of the work that we'll be picking up there to ensure that we capture that.
Councillor Sobbo?
Well, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I'm not there this morning. Just a few questions. I see that you've engaged a part-time marketing director to assist you with exploring ways to market yourselves better. And I just wanted to understand what areas. You talk about selling more beds to private funders. I'm assuming that's in the care homes, and I wonder what the equivalent is in the private care home market, and how you're going to compare yourselves with that, and how that will work out with you via marketing. I've got some. I don't know if you want to do them all at once. They're not big.
Would you like to take them, Carol?
Yeah. Take them all at once.
Take them all at once. Yeah.
Okay. Also, I note that there's a pause in the transfer of the shared lives service, and I'm wondering also when that's likely to move forward, and what that delay, why there's a delay in that. It's an important service, and I'd hope that would have moved forward by now. There's a question on finances, but I think it sort of speaks for itself, and you're obviously ongoing conversations with Dorset Council Commissioners in relation to the increases that you're going to be experiencing due to the budget announcements that were made.
Thank you, Councillor Sumper. So picking up on your questions, the first one in relation to our part-time marketing director. So her focus is twofold, one of which is, as mentioned, in terms of how we market our beds. Going forward, we already have a number of beds that we market privately, but we're seeking to increase that going forward in order that we can reduce our dependency on the block contract funding, and clearly that will feature more significantly within our sort of five-year plan going forward. So the work that Hannah, our part-time marketing director, is doing is preparing the ground for that activity. The second thing that she's focused on is in relation to St Martin's and the extra care housing scheme. There are a number of individuals to whom are looking to purchase some additional care support, and we want to be in a position where we are best placed to be that provider. So the work she's doing is about how we market ourselves in that position. In relation to the shared lives pause, that is in relation to the registered CQC manager who has taken a position elsewhere, and consequently Care Dorset isn't able to transfer the service without that registered manager being in place. So the pause is enabled for Dorset Council to undertake the recruitment that's necessary for.
Sorry, can I just ask, is there no CQC manager, or is that just for that specific area?
No, so the manager, as I understand it, is remaining in place for the time being, but the recruitment, the manager needs to be in place in order to transfer, and that manager is not transferring to Care Dorset.
From the existing service, I understand. Right, okay. Just
sorry that.
Yeah, thank you for that clarity.
Want to cover the national insurance?
Yeah, so clearly there is a challenge in relation to the sort of national insurance pressure that we will feel, which we estimate to be around 500,000, and we are in discussions with our commissions in relation to that. We are hoping to be in a position where the majority of that cost can be absorbed within our overall budget.
That'll be music to the ears, I'm sure, of finance people. Thank you.
Anybody else in the room? One question, if I may. You mentioned about increasing the number of with your marketing manager, so people direct to you rather than through our block contract. Does that have an impact on your capacity to take people from us?
No, it doesn't.
Okay, the recommendation is to note the report. So I think we noted that. Move on to the next agenda item, which is Care Dorset change of financial year. Ms. Best is going to introduce this one.
Thank you very much. Care Dorset began to operate in October 2022, and at the time we took the decision to run a fiscal year that ran from October to September. That has been problematic in a number of ways, particularly in the way that our financial year straddles 2 years for Dorset Council. So we're talking about uplifts and other financial elements. It's problematic from a budgeting perspective. So we are proposing to align ourselves to the traditional fiscal year, so April to March, from April 2026, and operate this fiscal year, so October 1, 2024, the 31st of March 2026, as an 18-month fiscal year. So the proposal, as this is a reserved matter for shareholder to approve, the move to operate as an 18-month year for this year, and then align from April 26.
Let's see, hands up. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, Councillor Wilson, Cabinet Member for Transformation and Corporate Development. I mean, this is fairly standard. I just wanted check. So we're going for an 18-month accounting period. That would mean that the audit obviously doesn't take place to the back end of that 18 months. How frequently do you check in with your auditors is the first part of the question. And also in that 18-month period, do you foresee any material financial transactions taking place that might require liaison with the auditors, just to mitigate that risk of that extended timeline?
So our finance director meets quarterly with our auditors just for that sort of check-in. There may be some subject to the strategy being approved in relation to that we need to engage with our auditors on as well. We also do meet as part of our sort of service level agreement with our finance colleagues on a quarterly basis, our Dorset Council financial colleagues on a quarterly basis as well for those checks and balances.
Anything else? No. So it seems to make perfect sense that our local authority trading company matches our own financial year. So we have to approve this. So does any member of the committee disagree? Propose it? Anybody else second? I'll second that. Okay. All in favour? Show of hands. Passed. Okay. Item 10. This is the Care Dorset annual performance report for the period September 23 to October 24, i.e. the old financial year. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chair. And just sort of recognising that point, I think, Chair, before we go into the DSO, of course, the information in relation to the finances is relatively light on the basis that the accounts haven't been audited yet, and therefore this focuses on some of the other elements in relation to the performance of Care Dorset over the past 12 months. Important to sort of just make the point in relation to paragraph 4 that the reference to the number of colleagues is headcount rather than full-time equivalent. Our full-time equivalent is about 60% of that number. So apologies that wasn't clear in the report. Section 9 draws some of the highlights from Care Dorset's on-site activity across the last 12 months, focusing on the people we support. So you will see in the report that there's been a whole range of activities that have been going on across the year, and I've just drawn some of those out, both in terms of Ridgeway in Weymouth having its own annual festival, the Hayes and their unofficial Olympic Games, with particularly grandchildren coming in and having various water pistol fights in the afternoon. We've had the alpacas in at Castleman House over the year. We've also been undertaking some charity work as well. So 35 people from the Hayes walked 53 miles over the course of April and May. Again, our colleagues in Ridgeway took 12 people we support on holiday to Cornwall. Some of those individuals to whom would not have had a holiday otherwise. In turning to section 10, we've really sought to improve the way in which we listen and engage with the people we support over the course of the last 12 months, and that has included setting up a number of listening groups. One particular group scrutinised our complaints as well, and the way that we responded to those complaints, and offer feedback in how we might improve the way in which we operate going forward. And we are due to launch our stakeholder survey, which has been co-produced by people we support in December, and that will be happening throughout January as well. Some activity in relation to the Community Development Fund across the year. Of particular note is the DJ equipment and workshops that have been taking place, which a number of people we support have really embraced and enjoyed. And indeed, on Friday night there was a disco that our DJs were doing their thing at. We've already mentioned in relation to St Martin's, but in terms of 12.2, keen to recognise the work that our colleagues and together with our commissioning colleagues in relation to opening Dorchester Road, which is a group of younger adults to support them having left home with their future goals. We've already got one individual there that's ready to move on to their next home as a result of the support that our team has offered there. Turning to colleagues, in relation to the last 12 months, there's been significant recruitment both in terms of Dorchester Road and St Martin's, particularly in relation to St Martin's, where a team from scratch was recruited and inducted. In terms of our position on turnover across the year, and recruitment continues through our campaign, our sort of strand around a career in care is not for everyone. We don't rely heavily on overseas recruitment. We do have a license with border agency, but that's really at the a minimal number. I think with 12 licenses. In terms of training, as I've already mentioned, we've invested heavily in that over the course of the last 12 months to ensure that our colleagues are confident and skilled to support an increasing level of acuity of people we support. And our relationship with our three recognised trade unions remains engaging and positive. Turning then to some of the service contract performance points I covered in paragraph 14. We continue to operate with a level of occupancy that is greater than it was at transfer, and that remains the case even with the closure of Sydney Gow House. Bedded reablement also is operating with an average occupancy of 83%, and we've also been doing a significant amount of work with our system partners to improve the flow from hospital. And community reablement, I think, is worth mentioning in 14.6. Just to offer a small vignette, I had the pleasure of talking to a person that we had supported, and indeed her husband, very shortly, lady of 92 years of age, who sadly grieving as a result of her husband having recently passed away, but she was exemplary, overflowing in terms of the feedback that she was able to offer for our colleagues, who had really meant that the last few weeks that she had with her husband was at home, and that they were felt very well supported by our colleagues. In terms of communication and public relations, so we were a finalist at the National Care Awards on Friday, and the awards ceremony was on Friday night. Sadly, we didn't win, but a huge accomplishment, I think, for our colleagues too, having been nominated. And that's certainly something that further awards we're hoping to progress in the course of the next 12 months. Some media coverage as well over the course of the last 12 months, as highlighted in 15.3. I've touched on the financial position, and that a more detailed report will come once the accounts have been audited. Risk management in terms of section 21. We've identified in that report the significant risks that our organisation continues to manage through A to F. And the mitigating activity. I won't go into detail. I'm happy to take any questions. And just to emphasise, in terms of 22, as Caroline's already mentioned, the board of directors direct the two companies, which is Care Dorset Holding and Care Dorset Limited. But they were the points I wanted to draw out, Chair. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. It paints a very good positive picture, which is always nice to see. Also, I just want to put on record, I've recently visited Castleman Plus and also Streets Meadow homes, and was really impressed with the quality of care, and particularly the management, who come across competent and knowledgeable of the sector, and provide good leadership to the staff. So that's really good. It's also good to see in the report all the extras that are going on, which is part of the ethos, I think, of Care Dorset, which we're all pleased to see. So my question is sort of linked to, because there has to be a question somewhere. The question is linked to the risk assessment, in that how do we get to the situation where all of our facilities should they be inspected by the CQC, are able to be working towards outstanding. Is that something that we're doing at the moment, and how do we envisage achieving that?
Thank you, Councillor. So in relation to CQC readiness, clearly we ensure that our managers are ready at all moments for the inspector to turn up. But in relation to some specifics, so all of our locations have both been monitored by our internal quality team. We've also had an external organisation undertaking some mock CQC inspections as well to provide us with some assurance and identify the areas where improvement may be necessary. We've also recently commissioned a well-led review, so we're reviewing all of the regulation elements of the regulation to ensure that we meet those obligations, and that's an activity that's happening through all of the senior leaders. There are certainly some areas for improvement, but I'm pleased to say that in all of the cases, the regulations meet the criteria in regulations. We also meet monthly with CQC, our relationship inspector, and keep her up to date with serious incidents and the work that we're doing to ensure that we remain compliant with the regulation. Our managers have also undertaken some recent training with our lawyers in terms of the single assessment framework, as well, to ensure that they're able to articulate and present to the inspectors when they do turn up.
Yeah, good. If you could add Steve Robinson, portfolio holder for adult social care, I'm going to get it right one day. If we could ask a subsequent question as well, one of the things that is CQC look at nowadays is record keeping. Medication errors, things like that, things that are actually quite difficult to get right when you're working within paper documentation, having been in the sector myself. One of their expectations is that providers move towards electronic recording systems. Is that something that we have, or is that something that we're working towards?
Yeah, so our principal system for care planning and care records is a system called Nourish, which our team use, and they've got the handsets that they use throughout the day. We've just invested both time and money in improving that system, and we've engaged with Nourish Direct. We've had some consultants out at making sure that system is operating as effectively as it can be, because as with lots of these systems, there are ways that they can be bespoke to ensure that they work for the specifics of any organisation. So Nourish consultants have been working with us to improve that system. We still operate a manual MARS system at the moment, and through our strategy, we'll be looking to move to an email system in time.
MARS is medication.
Yeah,
medication.
Yeah.
Nourish is the company that's based in Bournemouth.
I'm not entirely sure where they're based, actually.
I think there was a startup based in Bournemouth a few years ago, so they're open for discussion and development.
Questions? That's a big.
Yes, I'm reminded on paragraph 7, properties, the relationship with Dorset Council and yourselves, and that link and that financial driver. It also notes one of your health and safety risks around, of course, it's can be maintenance facilities. So I'm keen to know you've got a good relationship with Dorset Council in addressing sort of compliance issues and bringing buildings up to standard. You know, are we in a good place, or is there a lot more work to do? Be interested in your on that, please.
Thank you. The sort of headline response is yes, we do have a good relationship with Dorset Council, and indeed I met with a number of the executive directors on Friday to move that relationship forward, because we do need to resolve the occupation agreement that has been outstanding for a short while, and there is certainly improvements needed in those buildings, and our plan is to develop an annual schedule of repairs and maintenance for each of those properties, and then as we move forward through the next year, we need to look at plans for our estate more for the longer term.
So, I mean, I probably should know this, but are you saying tonight you're responsible for the internal maintenance?
So there is a mix in relation to the repairs and maintenance, and that's certainly why the occupation agreement needs to be concluded, because there is some ambiguity in the existing occupation agreement. But in broad terms, if it's screwed down, it's the responsibility of the council. If it moves, it's our responsibility. It's in Care Dorset.
I wonder, Chair, could we ask through this committee to develop the communication between property and Care Dorset, so we can actually resolve these issues as quickly as possible, because the impact upon the residents can be felt, and therefore it's something we can fix to the benefit of clients, not just buildings.
Do you have a specific point of contact in Dorset Council that you go to for all maintenance issues, or?
So we use our facilities manager engages with the help desk, the facilities help desk. From a strategic level, I'm talking directly to Jan, the executive director of the place. Yeah.
Might be worth revisiting how that works. That's maybe also help. Okay, we'll take that away. Councillor Somper, you had a hand up and then went down again.
Yeah, I think thank you. I think it was partially answered really, and it was just around the pressures on finances, particularly in relation to property and property maintenance, and lost it now. Where's it gone? And the rent reduction as well, which is highlighted, could significantly be a negative impact. And I don't see that in the risk management specifically, but obviously it's in the body of the report, and those conversations are ongoing. So I'm assuming that there's no need for that to be highlighted, particularly in any of these risk management categories. Although the board may feel differently, I don't know.
Thank you, Councillor. It's mentioned in relation to health and safety cause at D on page 36 and pack in relation to poor maintenance of facilities. There's certainly the issues log and risk log that exist that the board monitor it. There is more detail contained within those papers.
Thank you. There's no more. I was just going to point out, I guess it comes back to we discussed it earlier, 14.3, the reablement beds, but 10 months, we'd save 60k a month. So the model seems to be working. So we can bring Sydney Gale, etc. on stream better.
Yeah, if I might add, Chair, I think certainly some of the work that both Dorset Council colleagues and our colleagues have been doing to work on the wards as well, to identify people that are ready for discharge and move through to the reablement beds has had a real impact in terms of improving that flow. And it's certainly something we want to look at through the course of the next 12 months to improve that further. Because I think there is some misconception around reablement and what reablement can do in the eyes of our health colleagues. I think particularly those working on the wards.
Are you involved at all in the work the ICS is doing with Newton?
We have engaged with that and provided our views and thoughts on that. And indeed, Mark and I and colleagues had a strategy day a couple of weeks ago where we looked at that and how we might move that and other matters forward as well. Yeah.
Okay, let's say hands up on the screen. So the recommendation is to note the report. Okay, it's noted. So the next agenda item is urgent items, and there aren't any urgent items. Agenda item 12 is exempt business. So we have agenda item 13, which is considered to be exempt. So I need to read out a recommendation. It's quite wordy, but I need to read it all out. The recommendation is that in accordance with section 100A brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, to exclude the public from the meeting for the business specified in item number 13, because it is likely that if members of the public were present, there would be disclosure to them of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Act, and the public interest in holding the information outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information to the public. Can I have a proposer that we go into exempt business, please? Councillor Richardson, seconder. So Wilson, in which case it's approved, and we need to allow live streaming to cease. So for those of you in the public, goodbye.